their own language and to debate their own problem. But unfortunately, I do think that it will be a problem for the rest of Europe also. And my expression of thanks goes further than just today, because I had the wonderful opportunity of living in this college for over 1 year. And it was one of the happiest years of my life. And I want to use this opportunity to thank everyone in the college, the students and the professors and the residents, and also the people who work so hard in the college for everything that they gave me. Because it's exactly this kind of collaboration between European countries that we need more of, and we need more of it now. You do not win an argument by leaving the room. And I am absolutely sure that what my colleague says is correct, but that is not the point. The European Union obviously needs reform, but you don't get reform by leaving. And that's the essence of my argument, but I have more stories. And I was sitting in the canteen here eating some delicious breakfast on the morning of the Brexit debate. Sorry, not the debate, the vote. And students and professors came in and started talking about it. And they were very kind and they commiserated me. But I really want to thank my Spanish colleagues and friends for their extended, warm and very generous hospitality, including on that day, although it did drive me a little bit crazy because I had to say over and over again, hey, that wasn't my vote, okay? So all I wish I could say with confidence is that continental workers, including people from Spain, are afforded such affection, support and tolerance when they work in the United Kingdom. And this is of great personal concern to me, because last time I was in Italy, I was having a cup of coffee on the street and talking to another British guy, because actually we really love leaving the island when we can. And an Italian lady just came up to us and said, you know, you're British, what are you doing here? You're not part of this community anymore. And for me, I'm a little bit, and this is one story, I'm a little bit annoyed that personally my European citizenship could be taken away. And that leaves a lot of uncertainty. However, I also want to start with some words of respect. I respect Dominic's opinion and I respect his right to it. And I think that this is a wonderful opportunity to discuss these things. In fact, I don't even want to change Dominic's opinion. And this is because of the horror and disgust that I have had living outside of Britain, occasionally when I feel strong enough, watching the news from the island, and the quality of the debate and the quality of the politics, because it seems to me that there has been a real deterioration in the quality of public debate. And I'm very glad that I'm not debating with Nigel Farage, but that is the kind of personality and that kind of sentiment, anti-European sentiment, xenophobia, is behind some of the Brexit movement. And I think it's very important that people who advocate a Brexit position need to distance themselves from those kinds of discourse. The reason they don't is because that's where they get their support from. So, I hope this debate will be of honourable and reasonable standards, because one of the many gifts that my country has given the world is that of free speech and democracy, and long may it continue. And that is why I believe in a Great Britain at the heart of Europe. So, I would like to begin, having given my thanks and gratitude and respect, I would like to say that had I had a bet with Dominic before the Brexit vote, depending on when I did this, my £10 would have been about 14 euros. If I made that with him now, I think it fluctuates a lot, but I guess that's about 11 euros. And every British person is poorer now because of the Brexit vote. And we don't know how bad it will get. There is a problem about facts about the future. We don't have facts about the future. And if anyone could predict economic markets, then, well, we probably wouldn't be debating these things, we'd be making money instead. But I will just give you another story, a true story, about a gentleman who I have met, who has made a lot of money out of the Brexit vote. And that is because there are people in the elites who make money out of instability in financial markets. And that person is Peter Cruddas, who is a donator to Oxford University, and that's in the capacity that I met him. And he is actually a multi-millionaire, I believe a billionaire, and he made his fortune by providing an web-based platform where you can bet against the stock market. And of course, people start betting when there's instability. And I was just looking at the news about this gentleman. He's a fascinating gentleman because he came originally from the working class. He doesn't have any education at all, but he managed to rise to the top in finance and investment banking, and then created this business where he profited on instability. He backed the Brexit campaign. He gained from it, from the instability that it caused. And this is the kind of person that has been backing some of the stories behind the Brexit campaign. So that's just a little example. So really, my argument for staying in the European Union is that of principles. And I believe that principles are more important than money, although I have been talking a little bit about money, and I am a little bit annoyed that my pound is worth less. But fortunately, I earn in euros. So that's one good thing about Brexit, perhaps. But the principles of European civilization, I believe, are at stake. And that is why I believe so strongly and passionately that Britain is better placed inside the European Union. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. But first of all, my own personal story and the stories of those around me, because I speak not as an economist and not as a politician, but as somebody, as an academic and an educationist, and as a son, and as a brother, and as a husband. And that is because both myself and my brother work in European countries. We both pay our taxes and our pensions into European countries' systems. And we both have wives from other European Union countries. And what will happen with Brexit? Well, we don't actually know, but the current arrangements are that if I am back in England, I can use the health service. Currently, what it means is if I work 10 years here in this university, I can go back to England and I can claim a British pension because there are mutual agreements. What it means is my brother's children, who are currently in France, they can go to England and start a job there, even though they've never lived in England, but by virtue of the fact that they believe they're English, because when you're a little English boy in a French school, people don't think you're very French, even though you've never been to England or haven't lived there. So these stories don't just affect me, but they affect millions of people. And I'm very concerned, as are lots of other people, about what will happen. And part of that problem is the public sentiment surrounding the Brexit debate, which has been egged on and encouraged by Brexiteer politicians. So I do believe personal interest is the strongest argument, and I do have very strong personal interests in remaining. But let me just talk about another one of my personal interests, which is that of being an academic. And I take some statistics from the University of Oxford, which was officially opposed to Brexit. And actually, the Vice-Chancellor, during the Brexit debate, actually made a statement saying, please don't Brexit, we want to remain a university. And just to give you some statistics from Oxford, 18% of Oxford staff come from EU countries, 16% of its students come from EU countries, and 14%, that's £74 million of its funding comes from the EU. British universities were the research universities of Europe. And as an English person working in Europe, I have benefited from that. I worry about the future. Some of my colleagues in Oxford, I have a very good friend from the Netherlands with a small daughter, says that her daughter gets bullied in school because she is not from England and is from another European country. That is some of the stories. Other stories are much worse. The Polish embassy made an official complaint to the British government about the persecution of Polish people in England, which included violent acts. And that is the story behind some of the people who believe in Brexit. So, as an academic, we know we need a free movement of students, we need a free movement of professors, we need a free movement of ideas. And that is the source of our European civilization. And I'm a great believer in European civilization. In fact, I did prepare a slide for you with a picture of my favorite documentary of all time, which is entitled Civilization, which was filmed in the late 1960s and is also a book by Kenneth Clark, who is an art historian. And if you watch this, and I do recommend you Google it because it's absolutely amazing, it tells the story of European civilization through art. Because although we are different, we share the same culture. And another picture which I was going to show you was a picture of a church in England, in rural England, on the borders next to Wales, which was built in imitation or by the same people who built the cathedral in Compostela, at Santiago Compostela, because we have roots that stretch back when we perhaps arguably were more united, but we have common roots which are cultural, which are political, which are economic, which are artistic, which are social. Our institutions and our practices are shared. And they are interconnected. You cannot separate culture from politics. You cannot separate art from society. You cannot have these things without free movement of people, free exchange of ideas. And how much longer do I have? 2 minutes. Oh, good. Right. So, there are many, many, many examples of this. And I refer to my own ancestor on the British side, who came to San Sebastian and Vitoria and helped liberate the Iberian Peninsula from Napoleon, because Britain has always been involved in continental Europe, and now is not the time, in a time of increased globalization, now is not the time for Britain to leave. And on the note of defense, I believe that European civilization is under threat. I believe it's under threat internally, and I believe it's under threat externally. And we need more integrated defense. We need defense against terrorism. This can only happen with greater cooperation. We also have other external threats. And I had a very interesting visit to an RAF base in northern Scotland, where regularly Russian planes fly over to test the capabilities of the United Kingdom in responding to that threat. The same thing happens over Portugal. I believe the same things happens on the eastern borders of the European Union. And we know that these are serious security threats, and we don't have a cogent, coherent response to them. And just before I end, I just want to just stress two things. First of all, one of the great hallmarks of European civilization, one of its greatest achievements, is democracy. 51.89% of people voted to leave overall. We know that in nations within the United Kingdom, there was no majority to leave. I don't know whether this is a problem of adherence to tradition, a conspiracy, or oversight, but to my mind, it is not an example of good practice of democracy. So, I've given you some economic reasons, political reasons, cultural reasons, some personal reasons. And I do believe that it's difficult to have facts about the future. I do believe we have to be careful about making out predictions about the future to be facts. So my argument is principally one of principles. And I end with the words of, very English words, of John Donne, who was a priest and also poet. No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Daneil, thank you for your exposition and for pointing out the values of the cooperation. And now you have the time for a reply, and then he will have time for another answer.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that extremely careful and considerate response, and for the excellent points that were brought up. No man is an island is the quote that he finished with. I would like to say that quote to the European Union and its Commission, that it has acted as an island apart from the peoples of Europe. It doesn't consult, it doesn't engage. It is not open to any good ideas. Its structural deficiencies are causing the economic crisis that we've seen. They are causing destructions of livelihoods to which Daneil has been sympathetic. Daneil's concerned that people's joined up lives in Europe will be ripped apart by Brexit. As if so long as we ignore the problems of the European Union, we can just continue in economic malaise. We can continue without giving any show of support towards NATO, despite Trump's criticisms of European member states' failure to contribute to their own security. We can continue with quantitative easing and the effects of storing up hyperinflation in the future. We can continue with the feeling of loss of identity amongst peoples throughout Europe. We can continue with the Greek debt crisis, with the fact that their government is ignored and destroyed at the hands of the German finance ministry because they are dependent on a currency that they cannot remove even though they wanted to. And we should continue with all of this because there are some people whose lives are connected. Those people whose lives are connected, they are the ones that should be standing up and criticizing the European Union. They're the ones that should say, there are structural deficiencies in this institution and you must open democratic channels of debate if you are going to solve them. Insofar as you ignore the voice of the people, you prepare yourself only for your own decline. I am not in favor of institutional collapse. I am in favor of institutional reform and institutional rule. But if an institution is set up by a treaty that does not allow its own internal reform, then that treaty must be discarded and you must look for alternative measures in times of peace. It can't be the threat of war or the threat of collapse that breaks the European Union. It should be the threat of distance from its people that is expressed in a constitutional vote, that is expressed in a peaceful manner through open debate, through rule of law, where every vote is counted, one vote, one person, and the country decides to change its relationship. It may be that the European Union decides to punish Britain. It may feel so hurt that the British government decided to consult its people on whether to continue with the Lisbon Treaty. It may feel so aggrieved that the Parliament, also democratically elected by the British people, voted to allow its executive to trigger Article 50. It may feel so hurt that the judiciary also allowed the government to proceed on that basis through consultation with Parliament, and it therefore may choose to punish Britain. But let it be that it punishes a democratic country based on its democracy, lest we think that the only way of resisting the European Union is to remove constitutional government. The question isn't, has the pound gone up or down? The question is, despite the threat of economic damage, why is it that the European Union is refusing to listen to the lack of popular support for the Lisbon Treaty? Britain